So this year is all about the migration to Google Analytics 4. And this process can become quite complex if you had a lot of customizations in Universal Analytics. But what if your UA setup is pretty basic and you want to migrate to GA4 as fast and easily as possible and you are fine just with the basic tracking? Well, let's take a look. The migration depends on how Universal Analytics is installed, and there are three main ways. The first one is by using analytics.js. This is an older version of the tracking code, and it looks like this. You can see isogram. There are also GA commands such as GA create and GA send. So if you are seeing a code in your website source code and it looks something like this, it means that you're using analytics.js. By the way, you can also see analytics.js here. The next option is if maybe you created Universal Analytics property several years ago. In that case, you are probably using gtag. Gtag code snippet will look something like this, where you have gtag here, and you also have commands such as gtag right here and gtag config. And the third option is maybe you're using Google Tag Manager. In that case, on your website, there might be a code that looks something like this. It says data layer here, and also there is some ID that starts with GTM dash. If that is your case, then you should open your Google Tag Manager container, go to tags and see if you have a Universal Analytics tag or maybe multiple tags. If yes, then it means that you're using GTM to install Universal Analytics. By the way, when it comes to gtag, the tracking ID used in that code must start with UA and dash. This means Universal Analytics. So let's take a look at what kind of migration options do you have if your Universal Analytics is installed with one of these three options. If you're dealing with analytics.js, your main options are to switch to gtag, which means that your developer will have to implement the new tracking code, or you can migrate to Google Tag Manager, which means that your developer will have to install Google Tag Manager code, and then you will configure a new Google Analytics 4 property in it. If you're already using gtag and that's how your universal property is installed, then we can continue using that gtag. We will do some modifications, but they will be fairly simple. Or maybe it could be a good moment for you to consider using Google Tag Manager. But of course, that gets more technical. So if you still don't care about diving deeper and you just want the basic stuff automatically tracked by Google Analytics, then, well, maybe Google Tag Manager is not the best option in this particular case. Although, in my opinion, in all other cases, GTM is the best option. And if you're already using Google Tag Manager, then keep using the same Google Tag Manager container. I will show all of these options in this video. Let's start with the first one, analytics.js. In all of those three options, first of all, obviously you should create a new Google Analytics 4 property if you haven't already done that. You can do that by going to analytics.google.com, and then you can go to admin and click create property. Here you can enter the name of your property, for example, the name of your business. I will enter it, let's say, quick GA4 migration demo, then select the correct reporting time zone, the correct currency, and then click next. Then you can answer these questions and click create. This will create a new property and it will start talking about migration. So this applies if you are looking at this video before July 1st, I think, of 2023. I don't know what will happen in the future, but if you're watching this video further in the future, I assume that this pop-up will not appear. Anyway, you should be looking at GA4 migration as the implementation of the entirely new tool. In that case, I would suggest that you should click no, at least for now, and then click save. That way we will avoid some confusion. So when you create a new property, you have to create a new web stream because that's how you are going to collect data. Click web and then enter the address of your website. I will enter something like example.com and then click create stream. This will show you some of the settings and it will also show you the installation instructions. So if we're talking about analytics.js, the first option was to start using gtag. And that is the code that you can see right here. It says gtag here, and so on. If you accidentally close this window or maybe you come back to Google Analytics later, just keep in mind that in general, GA4 interface changes a lot. So if you see some differences, try to adapt and try to find the place where the tracking code is. For example, in my case right now, the tracking code is available by going to admin, then clicking on the web data stream, and then I should be looking for view tag instructions. Here I should select install manually, and this is the tracking code that I have to give to my developers, and that code should be added somewhere in the source code of the website. It is recommended to add it immediately after the head tag right here. I will not be showing the exact steps how to add this code because it differs based on what kind of platform or content management system are you using. Also, if you are using some popular content management or e-commerce platform, then there's a chance that maybe they already have a built-in Google Analytics 4 support. So in that case, you would then need to just copy the measurement ID, which starts with G. This means that this is GA4, and then you can paste it somewhere in the settings of your content management system. But if you're working with some custom platform, then definitely you will need to install the code that looks something like this. So once you install it, basically Google Analytics 4 is installed on your website. And later in this video, I will show you some of the standard configurations that you need to do immediately after you create a new property and install it. So let's say that a developer has already installed that code, which I sent to him or her, and now I want to test if this is working. So I can refresh the page. In fact, I can do even the right click and view page source, and I see the code somewhere here. In your case, it might be somewhere else in the code, but basically you just need to make sure that it is installed. Then there is a Chrome extension, and I will post a link to it below the video. It is called GA debugger. So click the link, install the extension, and then it will appear like this. Right now it is off, but if you click it, it will refresh the page and it will show on right here. So once that happens, then you should go to Google Analytics 4, then admin, and then keep looking for debug view. Then eventually you will start seeing the events coming from your device. For example, this page view. I can click it and I can see by expanding this page location that this is the page where I have installed Google Analytics 4. So the installation process for you in this case is done. If on the other hand, you decided to migrate to Google Tag Manager, I think that's a good choice. In that case, you will need to go to tagmanager.google.com, and there you will need to create a new property. The process depends on whether you already have containers or not, but in general, it would be something like here, where you need to create a new account, and then together with the account, you will need to create a new container. If you're completely new to Google Tag Manager, then I have a tutorial for beginners. I will post a link to it below the video. Go watch that first. And then in that video, you will actually learn how to install the basic setup of Google Analytics 4. But in a nutshell, the installation process will look like this. Once you create your Google Tag Manager container, you will need to provide this code to your developer so that he or she installs this in the head of the website. You can find that code by clicking on this container ID. Once your developer does that, then you would need to go to tags, new, tag configuration, and then select GA4 configuration. Here you have to paste the measurement ID of your property. You can find that by going to Google Analytics 4, then admin, and then data streams. Select your website data stream, then copy this measurement ID and paste it right here. Then set the tag to fire on all pages. So in triggering, click this pencil and then all pages. Finally, let's name this tag. You can name this something like GA4 configuration and then click save. Once you do that, click the preview to test if this is working fine. Then enter the URL of your website where you want to test this and where you have installed Google Tag Manager. Click connect, and then you will see a tag assistant is connected and your configuration tag fired. In this case, Google Tag Manager preview mode automatically enables data transfer to the debug view, so you don't have to enable the Google Analytics debugger. Then go to Google Analytics 4, again to the admin, debug view, and then you will see some events coming right here. So if this is happening, then you have installed Google Analytics 4 correctly. The final thing would be to click submit and complete all the steps to actually publish your changes so that Google Analytics 4 will be installed and will be activated for all your website visitors. Now, the next situation is if you are already using gtag. Maybe you have installed Universal Analytics recently, or at least several years ago. In that case, there is a very high chance that you have gtag on your website. In that case, I would suggest doing very small changes to your existing gtag code so that it will start tracking data and sending it to GA4 as well. So let's say that this is the code editor of the website where we have the gtag code snippet. Let me zoom in a bit. And here we see the tracking ID of our Universal Analytics property. It is here and it is here. So what I would recommend personally is to add to this particular tracking code the measurement ID of GA4 as well. You might be thinking that connecting site tags would be a good option, but later in this video, I will explain why I am not a fan of that particular option. So once you go to your Google Analytics 4 property, go to data streams, select your web data stream, and then we will use this particular measurement ID. In your case, the value will be different. And then let's go back to the code editor, copy the gtag command, and then let's paste the measurement ID here. And also let's replace it right here. So now this tracking code will send data to both Google Analytics 4 and to your old Universal Analytics property if right now when you're watching this video, Universal Analytics is still working. If it is not working, then you're free to get rid of that and just keep the plain GA4 tracking code. But if you're sending to both properties at the same time and Universal Analytics is still working, then that could be your option. Once you hit save, you can then go to the website, you can navigate it, and since I'm sending data to both properties, I can go to the real-time reports of my Universal Analytics property, and I have some events right here, well, not events, actually page views, but I will also see the data in my real-time reports, for example. So if I go to real-time in GA4, we already have some user data right here, and that's me. So there's also another option, but personally I did not get good results with it. It sometimes did not work properly. I often did not see myself in real-time reports of GA4, so I don't recommend that in general. And also there are more caveats, but you might be also tempted to go to admin, data streams, and then try to connect the existing tracking code in this manage connected site tags. But again, this part is honestly confusing. I tried to do various situations and most of them were not very intuitive. And often the data was not as correct as it could be or as it will be by doing this small change right here. So I added the measurement ID here, I added the command here, and that's it. Again, if you're no longer using Universal Analytics because it maybe stopped working, because maybe you're watching this in the future, then just remove this and you're good to go. However, also, if you're planning or hoping, maybe you would like to get a bit more technical and get more flexibility with the tracking codes, then maybe a good option for you would be to consider migration to Google Tag Manager and then installing Google Analytics with it. In that case, you or your developer will need to remove the existing gtag code on the website, add Google Tag Manager container code, and then you will need to install Google Analytics through Google Tag Manager. The process of GA4 installation will be the same as I have already explained in the analytics.js part right here. So basically you just need to create a GA4 configuration tag, enter your GA4 measurement ID, and then fire the tag on all pages. And then of course, don't forget to test and publish. So I will not be repeating the same thing. So if you need a refresher, you can go back, I guess, like 10 minutes back in this video and then rewatch the part where I show how to install GA4 with Google Tag Manager. Now, the third option, which will be fairly simple, is if you already use Google Tag Manager and you have installed Universal Analytics with it. In that case, continue using the same container. Here's an example. I have a demo container and here I have just one tag, which is Universal Analytics. It tracks page views, traffic sources, counts sessions, and so on. So in this case, when it comes to Google Analytics 4, you would need to click New, Tag Configuration, and then select GA4 Configuration. Here you should paste the measurement ID of your GA4 property. You can do that by going to the admin of GA4, Data Streams, select Website Data Stream, and then copy this ID right here and paste it here. By the way, I want to emphasize that from this chart, you need to choose one option. You don't have to implement two or more of them. Just use one option. Then in Google Tag Manager, select the trigger. So click on triggering or on this pencil and select all pages. Finally, enter the name of the tag. It could be something like GA4 configuration and click save. If when you are watching this video, Universal Analytics still is working, then you can keep this tag, let it collect data until Universal Analytics stops working. But if you're watching this video further in the future and Universal Analytics just stopped working and it is not collecting any more data, then you can at the same time delete the Universal Analytics tag. So you can click this checkbox and then delete here. So now let's test if this is working. So click Preview in Google Tag Manager, enter the URL of the website where you want to test this, click Connect. Then the page will be loaded. You can go, let's say, to several pages just to check if this is working properly, and then go to Google Tag Manager Preview mode. And here you should see that the GA4 configuration tag has fired. Then go to Google Analytics 4, and then in the admin section, go to Debug View. Here you should see several page views. If you have done that, you can click them and see what kind of information did they collect, such as page location. And if this is working fine, then once again, click Submit and publish this container so that GA4 would go live to your website visitors. So when it comes to data collection and tracking codes, this is basically it. You have now installed GA4 and it is collecting data. However, there are still some things that you need to configure in your GA4 property as well. So the first thing would be to go to Admin in GA4 property, then Data Settings, Data Retention, and then switch from 2 months to 14 months. Then click Save. This means that the reports in your exploration section right here, they will be able to use data from the last 14 months. Of course, after you have been collecting data for 14 months. But if you don't do this, then the maximum date range will be 2 months. Then another thing for you to consider would be to exclude internal traffic, which means that you should exclude your own events. So to do that, you should go to Data Filters and then learn more about this. Basically, you will need to activate this filter, but before that, you will need to enter IP address in other parts of the settings so that Google Analytics 4 would know that this particular IP belongs to you and those events should be ignored. So click this link to learn more about how to enable this feature. And then one last thing would be to go to Setup Assistant and mark a bunch of tasks here as completed, because otherwise there is a chance that while Google is doing some migrations from Universal Analytics, it might configure some things for you that you do not know. So to avoid that, you should mark all these tasks as complete. So let's start with this one. We have already installed tracking codes and we are already collecting data. So click here and click Mark as complete. Then you don't need Google Signals, in most cases at least, unless you want to do some remarketing. But again, this goes beyond the definition of a basic setup. So if you plan to do some Google Signal stuff, then I would say that you should properly dedicate more time for migration. But in this case, let's mark this as complete. Then conversions are not part of the basic setup. So mark this as complete. The same for audiences. You can review users if you want. You can import them from Universal Analytics, but right now I will just mark them as complete. Then I will mark Google Ads, this one, and then this one as well. You should also expand the advanced setup and mark all of these because these topics like BigQuery or user ID go way beyond the scope of a basic setup. So it looks like all items are now completed. And congratulations, you have successfully migrated to Google Analytics 4 if your Universal Analytics setup was very basic. But if you had, let's say, user ID configured there, custom dimensions, cross-domain tracking, e-commerce tracking, then what I show you here is not enough. It's actually far from enough. And you should spend much more time on the proper migration where you reevaluate what is important to track, what should be migrated, what should not be migrated, and there are many edge cases. So if you need help with that, I offer a Google Analytics 4 course, which is very in-depth, and it contains almost 4 hours of content just about the migration. And of course, there are many other modules, but in the context of migrations, this course is what you need because I explain various edge cases, various scenarios, and we go way beyond the basic setup. I will post a link to this course below the video. And that is how you can quickly migrate to GA4 if your Universal Analytics setup is basic. But if the complexity of your setup goes beyond what I showed in this video, then the migration process will be more complicated. In that case, take a look at my GA4 course, where I teach how to migrate smoothly. If you found this video useful, hit the thumbs up button below the video. That will help me understand what videos do you like and what should I create in the future. Also, if you want to learn more about Google Tag Manager or Google Analytics 4, then consider subscribing to this channel. My name is Julius, this is Analytics Mania, and I'll see you in the next video.